First and foremost, I want to start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. This is your brother Quan Wath of the Great Millstone Charlotte Camp, coming with another quick lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. And this morning, I just want to do a quick land back off the Elder ICR here in Charlotte, GMS All Precepts. He did a lesson going into this devil showing his horns, man, right? Pretty much that there's no more hiding, right? We know who he is through the actions that he's taken. And he made mention in this video of this article from Salon, right, as it reads, ISIS $175 billion windfall, Trump's mass deportation force set to receive military level funding, right? Now, if you have any knowledge of the stock market and how things move, right, whenever there's a major, allocation of funds to a specific sector, right, the markets start to fluctuate. So some stocks that I had my eye on, right, post Trump's election, right, being Geo Group and Core Civic. And the reason why is because we understand that these companies are used to build and fund and manage different prison centers, man, right? And Trump's whole MO, right, was to start the deportation process of the Northern Kingdom, man, right? To have that immigration detention centers, built and filled. And what we're seeing right now is the fulfillment of that. So when you look at these groups, you go back to November, they all took a major spike, right, post-election, because the people knew. They knew what was coming, right? Those investors had an idea that, Trump is going to make a major move, right? So they took a major jump, right? Both the Geo Group and then this other one, Core Civic. They both jumped about 70%, over the last year, which is a major bump, right? Almost to double your market value, right, in less than a year, from November to July. And then they both took big jumps over the last week. You go to the last week, right? They're up 5-6% over here. The other one is up 8% over the last 5 days, and that's all as a result of that news being broken, of them receiving that that money, man, right? That budget, like it says here, Donald Trump's budget, which passed in the Senate Tuesday, allocated some $175 billion toward the mass deportation campaign, more money than almost any country spends on its military, and many times the estimated yearly cost it would take to end world hunger, right? But this is, Esau preparing that war against the tribes, man, right? He's already been, right, at war with you, but this is his final stand, man, right? Him building up these military forces, right? Because best believe ICE isn't the only one, but this is the one that gets the national headlines, man, right? They have all these different military brigades, being prepared to come against you. And in doing so, they have to have the funds to both fund the groups and to build the facilities, right? And that's where these companies come in play. This is for Geo Group, the AI overview. Geo Group Inc. is a company that designs, finances, builds, and manages correctional and detention facilities, including prisons and immigration detention centers. They also provide support services like transportation and reentry programs. Geo Group is a major player in the private prison industry, operating facilities in the United States, Australia, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. But the point being is that they're being used to build these facilities, man. That's where all this money is going, right? Because when you look at the budget breakdown, it reads It's like it. This is broken down. The 175 billion top line number includes nearly $30 billion in ICE's enforcement budget, which is pretty much them hiring more people, right? Them, training up these guys to kick in doors and abduct. It reads $45 billion for building new immigration detention centers, going back to the Geo Group and Core Civic. It reads $47 billion for the construction of a border wall, $12 billion for state-level immigration measures, and roughly $10 billion to reimburse the Department of Homeland Security for safeguarding the borders of the United States, among other provisions. But the point being, you see, the way the market moves is because they're anticipating, right, a major influx of these different detention centers needing to be built, man, because their focus isn't on the Northern Kingdom anymore, man. Right? They use this immigration reform as a title for it, but they're focusing on the people in the country now, man. Right? They're trying to get Northern and Southern Kingdom, as well as any other dissenting opinions, right, toward this country, man. Right? So as we enter into a time of civil war, great up unrest, of a sedition, this is what's going to be used to pretty much imprison the people, man. Right? These are going to be, like it talks about here. It was speaking on the alligator, they call it alligator Alcatraz, but they were talking about how FEMA has been funding, right, these concentration camps. These are the people who are going to be in lockstep with FEMA, right, in regards to those concentration camps, man, right, building those different facilities, turning these empty warehouses and things of that nature into these detention facilities, man, right? And like I said, they already have $45 billion allocated toward that, right? So let's go here. This is Nahum chapter 3 and verse 1. Woe to the bloody city! It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. Right. So Jake has no way out outside of Yahweh Hashem Shot, man. Right. It says the noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and of the jumping. It's like and of the prancing and of the jumping chariots. Right. So I'm bringing that out because this is that traffic, right? This is these countries, or this country rather, right? That traffic being this going into the markets, right? All these things are going to be brought to a halt, but it shows you that this is the business of Babylon the Great. They went from the physical slavery to this digital slavery, the neo-slavery, right? But in doing so, they have access to, put you back in the physical bondage, man, right? And these detention centers, right, are being used to put you in that physical bondage again. And they're going to be used, rather, right? So that's why people are investing their money into them, because they see that potential down the line, right? It's gonna, for a company to damn near double their market value, their market cap in less than a year. That's a major deal, right? It says, actually, let me get this in Isaiah 42, right? Because that's what that jumping of chariots, right, is. The people going back and forth to work, but the ultimate, going into that traffic, that business, that ultimate business is the flow of money through, right, these different trades, man, right, that whole stock market system. It reads, Isaiah 42 and 22, but this people is robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore, right? So that goes into our people's, condition that we've been in, right? But even more now that Jake is going to be put in that condition in an even greater sense now, man, right? I did want to get this here article too, because this morning, investing.com, it says prison stocks rally as detention center funding passed, right? So it says investing.com shares of Geo Group and Core Civic rose in pre-market trading Monday after Congress passed President Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending bill, which significantly increases funding for immigrant detention. Geo Group jumped as much as 7.4%, while Core Civic gained 2.7%. The two companies are the largest private contractors operating U.S. immigration detention centers, right? So these, like I said, they're using immigration as the buzzword, but it's just detention centers, man, right? They just need to be able to detain great masses of people, and that's what these Americans out here don't seem to realize is that this is them, right, preparing, right, to turn this into a prison planet, man, right? It says the new legislation will triple federal spending on immigrant detention, allocating $45 billion over the next 4 years, more than what was spent during the Obama, Biden, and first Trump administrations combined, according to federal data. The bill also earmarks $46.5 billion for continued construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall and $6 billion for surveillance and border technology alongside a broader package of immigration enforcement measures. Officials at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement said the funding would allow them to roughly double detention capacity to 100,000 beds, expanding their ability to detain undocumented immigrants, right? So they're going to be able to detain, right, what it says 100,000, but it's probably double to triple that amount, man, right? Or at least that's what they're preparing to do, is to detain, right, hundreds of thousands of people, right? Not only for being for being undocumented, right? Because we see that them doing this, they're passing the what is it called, real ID, right? Things of that nature, and that other documentation being that that mark of the beast, man, that microchip, right? That has to be received in order for you to participate in society, right? So all these things are tied to, right, the coming of that chip, that mark of the beast, man. It says the agency's average daily detainee population reached 46,000 last month, the highest on record since it began disclosing these figures during the first Trump term. This bill will make our communities safer, blah, blah, blah. The U.S. immigrant detention system, the largest globally, has expanded over 4 decades to hold undocumented immigrants awaiting asylum or deportation proceedings, traditionally focused on border crossers deemed flight risk or those with criminal charges. The population profile is shifting. Let me see here. There was a point I wanted to get. Yep, this Geo and Core Civic say they have 14 unused prisons across several states that could accommodate thousands of additional detainees. Hiring is already underway in some locations, right? So that point being that these companies were already prepared, right, for these laws to be passed, man, right? Those jumps in the stock price, right, were them anticipating laws like this to be put in place, man, right? And the people investing in these companies, right, saw these coming down the pipeline, man, right? So let's go back here. Because that's pretty much the point. I mean, we can go into that Psalms 83rd chapter, right? Because this is part of that crafty counsel, man, right? Because they're doing what? They're gonna imprison you, and then they're gonna continue to make money while you're in prison, right? As a result, man. Psalms 83. This is Psalms 83 and 1. It says, keep not thou silence, O Most High. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Yahweh Shem Yahushua. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. They that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. And this is part of that crafty counsel, man. Right? Them preparing, right? Again, preparing war, right? Against the Israelites, man. Right? And their focus being on the believers of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. This is why we see, the censorship. This is why we see the so-called anti-Sim campaigns, right? Because they're trying to combat, right, the truth, right? But as the scriptures say, there's nothing you can do against the truth but for it, man, right? I'll just read down verse 4. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted with one consent. They are confederate against thee, right? So this is them, right? Seeing the way the market moves is indicative of, right, them consulting and being of one consent, man. This is that confederacy, right? Going into, being of one mind, being of one spirit, right? Because, like we read, Geo Group, they control, or they have facilities where the United States, right, South Africa, Australia, and the United Kingdom, man, right, and two of those, the United States and the UK, being those unclean, those two of those three frogs, rather, right? Now, that's pretty much the point, man. Because as the scriptures talk about the keepers of the house trembling, right? Those men who look out the windows, right? They're the left hand forecasters of the state of the economy, man. Right? So when you see things, when war starts, you see stocks like Lockheed Martin, right, start to take big jumps, right? When you see the immigration reform or detention, rather, right, get billions of dollars poured into it, you see Geo Group and Core Civic, right? All these things are indicative of the direction that the country is, headed, man. But ultimately, we know that it's all the will of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai at the end of the day, And so we can get that and we'll close out. Because that was the point. I just wanted to add to that article that the elder had brought out. Because we see all these stocks being, receiving major bumps. This is Isaiah 14. And I'll start in 24. It reads, let's read this in the NLT. Isaiah 14:24 in the NLT. The Lord of heaven's armies has sworn this oath. It will all happen as I have planned. It will be as I have decided. Right? So this is the will of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai in the earth. I will break the Assyrians when they're in Israel. I will trample them on my mountains. My people will no longer be their slaves, nor bow under their heavy loads. I will have a plan for the whole earth, a hand of judgment upon all the nations. The Lord of heaven's armies has spoken. Who can change his plans? When his hand is raised, who can stop him? Right? So this is all the will of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai at the end of the day. Right? Esau is that pride that he's right gonna accomplish his devices, right? And going back. That's why people are comfortable investing, because they're not considering the latter end, right, of this system, man. Right? They believe that these things are going to continue to grow and grow, right? Without any recompense, man. Right? Without any punishment attached to it. But just that point being, right, as we see these different stock market movements, right, that shows you, that can give you an indicator rather of the direction that the country was headed, because this no those major jumps took place in November, right? And that's because they knew that a law being passed in this this vein, right? They knew these were it was about to happen, man, right? They knew that Trump was eventually going to, right, give a major jump into the building, the funding of these deportation and detention centers, man. But that's the point. Lord willing, it was edifying through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. I want to close by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai Bashem Rakah Hakodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.